How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Mount Silver Circuit Invitational Top 8. I'm back on the mic with Owen here to commentate
Hi.
our last Top 8 match. Now, this is a bit of a different format since this is going to be a replay of a match that took place earlier between 2thyfor and Lightcore due to scheduling issues. Now, the way that this match is going to go, or at least this side of this segment of the bracket is going to go, is Lightcore may or may not be around to play top four. So if he's not around to play top four, then 2thyfor, aka Trey, will take his place. But yeah, without spoiling anything, we're gonna get right into this top 8 match and just go through the replays here. So let's
Sounds
get
good.
started.
So, just a real quick analysis of
Oh,
the
this
two
is
teams we have
moving
here.
too slow.
We do have Kangaskhan, Tornadus, Xerneas, Groudon, Komodo, Amoonguss, a very standard team from Lightcore, and a bit of more creative team from 2thyfor. We got the Kyogre, Lunala, Lopunny, Celesteela, Crobat, Tapu Koko. Definitely the Kangaskhan, Tornadus lead is a big threat, but instead we just see the Komodo, Amoonguss lead with the Protect and the Z move right off the bat.
Yeah, we're just going to see this a very interesting lead here from Lightcore because normally these Kangaskhan and Tornadus teams like to lead with Kangaskhan and Tornadus, but Como and Amoonguss is also a very valuable option because this allows the immediate redirection support plus Komo's ability to get the Z move. As an interesting selection here, we're going to see Low Kick from Komodo. Usually these Komodo, as their fighting type moves, like to run Focus Blast to go more full special, but we're going to see the Low Kick go into Trey's Crobat, and this is not going to do that much damage at all. But that does allow Amoonguss to get a free Spore, as Trey does get the Tailwind up.
Yep. Now we see Super Fang go into Amoonguss, but it did protect as Kamo just goes for Clanging Scales, not doing that much damage to Celesteela though, but picking up the KO on that Crobat.
Yeah, what Como is just doing right now is just getting a bunch of chip off. Like, it's not super consequential damage right now, but it's definitely still damage. As Low Kick surprisingly going to be able to be a one-hit KO on Lopunny. It is super effective, and Como is at +1 attack, so I guess not super surprising, but I don't see Lopunny as usually the most heaviest Pokemon out there, so bit of a surprising KO there. But we're gonna see Xerneas take
Yep.
some damage and switch out back into Amoonguss as Trey brings in his final Pokemon, which is going to be that Kyogre. And Celesteela is going to wake up here and go for a heavy slam into Amoonguss. Does a decent chunk of damage, about a little bit over 50%. And Komodo here is just kind of sitting pretty.
Yep. I mean, it's definitely not being threatened too hard by either Pokemon on the field. And now we just see the substitute from Kamo wanting to negate that damage from the Ice Beam that comes into it, fading the substitute as Spore puts that Celesteela right back to sleep.
Yeah, Komodo just sitting on the field here as it's just, it's taking some damage here and there, but it's just being able to freely get off attacks against Trey's team. And finally, we're going to see a knockout come from Trey's then as Lightcore's Amoonguss is going to go down to an Ice Beam. But this does allow Lightcore to possibly switch in his Groudon, but instead he brings in his Xerneas. And with Celesteela asleep, it is powerless to stop
Yep.
Komo getting that low kick off. And Geomancy reasonable, sort of maybe free against a Kyogre since it's going to be hitting it from the special side, but Kyogre instead decides
Yep.
to target down the Komodo,
Well,
and this allows
yep.
a free switch in from Groudon, and that likely
Groudon.
means the end of the game.
Yep. Yep. I would like to point out real quick how much damage that Moonblast did to Kyogre. Usually Kyogre is more especially bulky, but we see from that that wasn't very bulky, so
Yeah.
that's definitely something to pay attention to. It is not the bulkiest Kyogre in the world.
Yeah, I know Trey is a fan of the faster Kyogre variants, and I think a lot of players in the community now are shifting to those faster Kyogre variants if there is not an obvious indication of Trick Room on the team. And judging by how that replay went, it does not seem that this Kyogre is the slow and bulky type. But Nick just playing the game there, just letting Komodo do its thing, and just wearing down Trey's entire team to the point where he can just safely bring in Groudon and clean up from there. So going into game
Definitely.
two, we're just gonna see how Trey decides to adjust here. So going into game two, Trey is going to be leading off with Celesteela and Crobat, as Lightcore is going to be once again leading off with. Oh, he's going to lead off with a Mungus, but switch it up and bring Xerneas instead, which is definitely less advantageous against a Celesteela and a Crobat.
Uh, correct. And the one thing to note here, is with that Groudon switching that we're seeing right now. Uh, if he went for the taunt play or just the tail into Haze, that does definitely put him at a much riskier spot on 2thyfor's end, because that Groudon is pretty much free just to go for an eruption or something of the sort here.
Yeah, it does have to be scared of wide guard here, but normally these teams do have an option to hit Celesteela with Overheat as a single target attack. But we're going to see the taunt go into Lightcore's Kangaskhan, predicting, or Lightcore correctly switching out into his Kangaskhan to prevent his Amoonguss from being taunted, as Kangaskhan's Double Edge is going to be a clean knockout into Crobat. However, Celesteela is going to block that eruption with the wide guard, as Kyogre gets a free switch in here, and now Kyogre is in a pretty good spot, as Groudon is going to have to switch out, and this Water Spout easily going to be able to pick up the KO on Kangaskhan, and
Definitely.
Celesteela definitely going to get some big damage off, as that is able to knock out the Amoonguss.
With the heavy slam, definitely. And then we see Groudon Xerneas come back in here. Lunala switch in for the Kyogre. Definitely not wanting to let that Groudon keep its weather up for the rest of the game, as Xerneas just goes for a Geomancy.
Yeah, Lightcore definitely on the back foot here. Definitely needs to get some positioning back. So he does. So the Geomancy is a very valid play. But I can see Trey's game plan here is to just get a safe switch in back into Kyogre, because that is his win con. As Celesteela is pretty much going to be able to be untouched if it is in the rain. But switching in Kyogre is still pretty risky, considering it has to take a Moonblast from Xerneas, which is able to survive, allowing Celesteela to get the heavy slam off into Xerneas, and the overheat failing in the Primordial Sea, which will pretty much allow Trey to
Yep.
potentially clean up this game, as he's going to
Yep.
protect his Kyogre, just making sure that it doesn't go
Yep.
down.
And with that,
And
Lightcore just forfeits.
yeah,
Can't do anything here. So there we go on to game 3 of this set.
yeah, I definitely think there was an out potentially for Lightcore there if he was able to get rid of Kyogre, because that makes Celesteela a bit more vulnerable. However, I don't think he would have been able to stop Lunala in the back, especially if it was still threatening its Z move, which it likely still was. So
Mm-hmm.
definitely a much cleaner end game by Trey there. He had that guaranteed win, or almost semi-guaranteed win with the
Yeah.
Kyogre switch in. But going into game 3, I guess we'll see how each player adjusts. If they're going to go with, Lycor is going to go with his original game 1 plan of trying to get Komodo going, or if he's going to try and switch it up, predicting a mix-up
Yep.
from Trey.
Yeah. So if we start this up, we're going to see the same leads as game 1, with the Amoonguss Komodo mirrored by the Celesteela Crobat. Uh, and we see the Super Fang right off the bat into the Amoonguss slot, as Komodo goes for the Clangorous Soul Blaze, gets a hefty amount of damage off to that Crobat, and gets Komodo all boosted up. Spore puts the Crobat to sleep, as Heavy Slam picks up the KO onto Amoonguss.
Yeah, interesting to note that this Amoonguss, we might have actually seen this in game 1, but Amoonguss is actually faster than Celesteela, which is interesting considering Amoonguss is known for being a super slow Pokemon. However, players do like to run more speed on their Amoonguss, but I was not aware that that would be enough to outspeed a Celesteela. But
Definitely.
that Crobat being put to
Yep.
sleep is big, because now that prevents it from hazing away Komodo's boosts. But Groudon coming in here and getting the KO on Crobat does allow Trey's Kyogre to switch in
Yep.
here. But Groudon can easily just switch out here. However, whatever is in the back will have to take an attack from
Yep.
Kyogre.
Yep. We see
Um,
Kyogre come in, and the thing about Kyogre is that if it's not specially defensive, it's even less normal defensive. This low kick's going to do a lot of damage, as the Earth Power cleans it up, leaving the Celesteela just doing a little tiny bit, 50% of chip damage to that Komodo.
it's definitely a bit
That's
more than a
enough.
tiny bit, but
Yeah.
this Komodo is uh, still hanging on with a good amount of its health, and it is going to be able to it is going to be decreasing its defenses with that Clangorous Soul, or the Clang Scales, which will allow Celesteela. I guess it doesn't matter, since Celesteela now definitely in range after the Moongeist beam. But now
Yep.
we are facing down an endgame with Groudon and Xerneas against Celesteela and Lunala.
Yep. We see Groudon come in. I mean, it's sitting pretty nice here. Really can't die to any one hit from 2thyfor's side. We see the menacing Moonrays Maelstrom go into it. Groudon hangs on with the overheat. going into Celesteela, pick up the KO as Xerneas uses Moonblast and steals up the game for Lightcore.
Yeah, that was a huge special attack drop coming in for huge special attack drop coming in from Lightcore Xerneas, likely meaning that Groudon was able to survive the menacing Moonraze Maelstrom, which basically allowed it to get that overheat off into Celesteela, basically making it so that Trey was not able to KO Lightcore Xerneas. So a bit of luck coming in from Lightcore's side, but it was still a really good game. Both players played extremely well. And with that, we're done with our top 8, and we're going to be getting into our top 4 now, and I think we're going to be jumping right into Lightcore's game in just a couple minutes. So
Yes.
we'll see you when we get back.